And this kind of change is that disparity that I was talking about.
Glad Day for a really long time was in a really sort of malicious battle with the federal government, specifically around censorship and police targeting.
Straight people were saying like this is outrageous, this is like Nazis attacking, like what's going on here.
Dit is de Church Wellesley Street in downtown Toronto, ook wel de Gay Village genoemd. Het broeit hier van de LGBT, cafeetjes, winkeltjes, maar er is ook een heus archief over alle informatie van de LGBT'ers in Canada. Achter mij bevindt zich 's werelds oudste gay boekenwinkel. Je kunt er tegenwoordig niet alleen terecht om een boekje te lezen of een boek te kopen. Je kunt er ook koffie drinken of in de avond lekker een cocktail drinken. Kom, laten we even kijken. We're now in the bookstore of Toronto, the LGBT bookstore. For how long does it exist?
So Glad Days existed in some form since 1970. It started out actually based totally out of the founders' backpack in their apartment. So for a while, that was the entire way that he sold. Eventually, it sort of had a couple of different spaces before eventually ending up over at Yonge and Wellesley, so about a street over from here. And then we moved into this space right on Church Street in the Gay Village just about 2.5 years ago now. So yeah,
really nice. Yeah. And how many books do you have in yours?
Yeah, I mean we have I think we have over 1,000 titles with a lot of backstock and overstock as well. So you see a lot of titles on the shelves, but we have even more stuff downstairs, which is sort of like old stock or stuff that we have too many copies of. So. Yeah, I mean it's definitely, I mean it's Toronto's oldest surviving independent bookstore as well. So it's probably the most comprehensive LGBTQ front list and back lists like in Canada probably. So.
And I also heard on the internet that this bookshop had a real history in existence.
Yeah.
They had a really hard time.
Yep.
Can you explain it?
Yeah, so Glad Day for a really long time was in a really sort of malicious battle with the federal government, specifically around censorship and police targeting. So for years and years and years, because so Glad Day, a lot of Glad Day's business used to be in pornography and sort of like sexy stuff, right? And so a lot of the times we would be importing stuff from the States usually. They would either get held up for, like an unbelievably long time at the border. We would receive stock, like specifically like pornographic or gay stock, and we would find that like stock would just be destroyed as like an accident. And then for a long time as well, plainclothes police officers would come into Glad Day basically looking for something to get Glad Day in trouble about.
You said the history of LGBTs is really long.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which book does that
so we have
that?
Yeah, we have some really fantastic books. So I mean, for instance, right in front of you, Don McLeod, he's a local historian and author. So he's put together books sort of so there's the 1981's bathhouse raids when police raided gay bathhouses in Toronto. That's sort of seen as the sort of flashpoint of like LGBTQ organizing and activism in Toronto specifically.
Michael vertelde mij in de boekshop over de zogenaamde bathhouse raids en dat zorgde voor een startschot in de emancipatie van LHBT'ers. Ik ben wel heel erg nieuwsgierig geworden over deze bathhouse raids, dus ik besluit om op pad te gaan naar Tim McCaskill. Hij wordt gezien als een van de belangrijkste spelers in de emancipatie van LHBT'ers in Canada. Hij kan mij vast van alles vertellen over die geschiedenis. Hey.
Come on in. Hi.
Hoi.
Tim.
De Badhouse Raids. Heel interessant natuurlijk. Maar wat was dat precies? Tim McCaskill, gay-activist van het eerste uur, kan mij er van alles over vertellen.
February 5th, 1981, in the middle of the winter. It was a Thursday night, which was a cheap night in the baths, so it was be full. And they raided all the baths simultaneously, arrested close to 300 people.
Okay.
Some of the baths they were just ripped apart. They smashed things up and destroyed the furniture and kicked holes in the walls, and it was like a police riot. One of the baths actually had to close because there was so much damage they couldn't, and no bank would, after they'd been charged, would give them a loan to begin to do the repairs. So they were basically trying to put people out of business. Even though the sex was supposedly legal, there was another law that had never been changed that said that any place that was resorted to, any place you went to engage in acts of indecency was an illegal place. And so the cops said, well, people, indecent acts between two consenting adults is legal, but they're still indecent.
Yeah.
So therefore, any place you go to do that becomes an illegal place. So that was the excuse that they used to raid the baths. But when the bath raids happened, I remember that following morning there was a meeting about what to do, and it was decided that there'd be a demonstration that night.
The second night
at
after
midnight.
the raids.
The Thursday night was the raids. Friday night was going to be the demonstration, and I'd missed most of the meeting. I had to come in late because I was at university at the time, and they decided on this meeting that evening, and I thought it was crazy because it took weeks to organize a demonstration.
Yeah.
There was no, you couldn't send out emails. There was no social media. You had to talk to your friends on the phone and tell them about it, and they had to talk to their friends and put up posters.
Gay rights now! Gay rights now! Gay rights now! Gay rights now! Gay rights now!
So for the first time, ordinary people in the community recognized that they needed activists to keep the places that they felt safe open. And activists suddenly realized that when under attack, these people who we'd all thought were so unpolitical could be very angry and very political and were willing to come out on the street and fight. And so it produced this kind of shift in the community that made a much, much stronger community than we'd ever had before. So by '86, in the province, we finally got recognition under the Human Rights Code, which meant that you could no longer legally discriminate against gay people. And we were, I think, the second province to do that. Quebec did it fairly early on, but then Ontario was one of the biggest provinces, and so that was very significant. And then by the 90s, the fight was around relationship recognition, whether my partner could be on my medical plan for work, that kind of thing.
Yeah, just relationship, not marriage.
Not marriage at all at that point. No one was talking about marriage. And so my partner and I, for example, they changed the way that taxes are done. So we had to start submitting our taxes as a couple, right? Even though we never got married or anything like that, right? There was no choice. And that, in fact, in the middle of the AIDS epidemic, disadvantaged poor people. Because say one person had HIV and was on government assistance because they couldn't work, but was living with their partner, and their partner was still working, then suddenly their government assistance would be cut off because now that relationship was recognized, whereas before it wasn't recognized.
No.
And so really poor people and really sick people probably ended up worse off because of that change in relationship recognition.
How do you think the tolerance is against LGBT people?
Well, I think there certainly has been, if one looks at surveys and things, a much greater level of tolerance than there were, say, back in the 70s. Even around 2000, the majority of the population was largely opposed to gay marriage, and now 60-70% of the population doesn't even think about it.
Oké, dus met de wettelijke tolerantie zit het wel goed. Maar volgens Tim omvat dat niet de gehele tolerantie. Volgens hem is het een niet abstract begrip en wegen verschillende factoren mee.
Here's usually what people are thinking of. So here we have time, and here we have rights. Right? We're going to do a graph. So here we'll say this is 1969. So that's, before this, you're a criminal, and therefore what a criminal is somebody who's deprived of their rights.
Yeah, being gay was a criminal.
Yeah, being gay was a criminal. And so the vision you have is that, so this happens, and then over time, people get more and more rights. And so we'll say this is 2005.
Yeah, that's the normal tolerance.
Marriage, right?
Yeah.
And so we put in here, like 1986 is human rights protection code. And like 1996 is spousal relationships, right?
Yes.
So, in Western societies, because we tend to read from right to left, the future is always left to right. The future is always to the right, and up is always progress, and down is always bad, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So here's the standard graph. Now, what this graph assumes is that the sheet remains the same. Society remains the same. So we're graphing this change in terms of a society where rights are available to other people. Right? But what happens if society itself changes? What happens if bad things happen, right? You've still got a line. It's still going somewhere, but it's no longer this up to the right thing that it's supposed to have.
Yeah.
And this kind of change is that disparity that I was talking about. So 1969, the vast majority of people live in middle income areas, right? So it means if you're gay, you can all have some income that'll allow you to go to a bar and have a beer and, ride in the transit and get there and have a car and all that kind of stuff. Now women are in a slightly different situation, because remember, women are earning 60% of what men earn. So there's lots of gay male bars, maybe one lesbian bar that manages to keep going before it goes out of business and another one starts up, right? Because women just don't have that income, right? So here is a society, though 66% of us have some sort of income, middle income, to 2005, when in fact more than half of us are poor in the city, right? So people can't get on transit and go down to a bar. They can't afford to spend a night in the bar drinking beer. They can't afford to go to a bath, right? They have to go to someplace else. And so, whereas we see this tolerance going on, we also have to recognize that increasing disparity actually produces inequalities that then produce all sorts of other ramifications. So here we have a situation where there's legal inequality, but social equality. And here we have a situation where there's legal equality, but greater social inequality.
Yeah.
Right? And so that means that your question about tolerance gets all complicated.
It's a really hard question.
It's a really hard.
Ook al is Canada een tolerant land, het heeft ook zijn nadelen.